this is Devon. Thank you for watching another one of my videos. Unfortunately, this painting was a fail for me, and it's because I used paints of different densities. So I'm putting a base down by Artist's Loft by Michaels. It's a pre-mixed pouring paint, and it was much thinner than the paints that I mixed up by Liquitex, and so the Liquitex paints were thicker. I mixed them with Floetrol. My ratio was 2:1 Floetrol to paint, and that's why they sank. Now I had two options to fix this problem. First would have been to mix up my own base and have it the same consistency as the Liquitex paints. Or I could have thinned out my Liquitex paints to match the density, or even be a little bit thinner than the base. But I didn't do that, and you'll see how this turns out. The colors that I'm using are all neon: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and pink. And right now I'm torching out the bubbles on my base. Everything that I did in the process of making this painting was correct and was good. It just was the densities of the paint, and the paint sank under the black, as you will see. So for my swipes, I line up the paint along the canvas, and I'm going in rainbow order. So I'm adding my red. Orange. Yellow. Green. And this painting actually turned out very pretty. I'm very sad that it sank, but the paint was too heavy for the base. Here is my neon blue. And my neon pink. Now my red is getting a little bit cut off, so I'm adding some extra black base and some extra red to make sure that I have all of my colors. Next up, I'm picking out my swiping tool, and I choose my favorite swiping tool, which is this one. And I'm measuring to see how much of the composition I can swipe through with that spatula or that palette knife. And here I'm deciding which I'm going to swipe with, whether I'm going with black or white. And I ultimately end up swiping with white, which was very pretty, as you'll see. And I load up my palette knife with the cell activator. And my cell activator is titanium white paint and Australian Floetrol. 2:1 ratio of paint to Floetrol. And here I do a nice swipe through all of the colors, and as you see, I'm gliding across the paints. I'm not digging into the paint. I'm sliding across and I'm going all the way to the end, and I wipe off my palette knife because I like to save that extra paint as a flow extender. So when I stretch out the painting, I'll have plenty of paint on my canvas. So I have 2 spots left in the design that I need to swipe out still. So I get a smaller palette knife and I put my cell activator on that palette knife. And I'm trying to figure out how much I'll need for that area. And here is another nice swipe, gliding over the paints, going all the way to the end of the painting, spreading out all those colors, which ultimately sank. And I go in one last time and swipe that last little bit, and you could see me measuring to see how much of the palette knife I need to cover with my cell activator. And you can already see the paint sinking. You could see those craters coming up and the cell activator disappearing from the end of the painting. See, I went all the way to the end and you can't see any of the cell activator. It almost immediately sunk down under that paint. But I still have my neon colors, and those are starting to sink as well. And as I stretch the painting out, they sink even more. So I'm getting my gloves on to stretch the painting out. And I apologize for part of the view is obstructed while I'm stretching this out as I stretch it towards myself. But at this point, I don't realize I have a problem, but you can see more and more that paint is sinking down under the black. So I'm stretching out my colors, and it made a pretty design with the cell activator. So I take it to my right corner first and then my left. And here I'm stretching it out to the right bottom corner. Again, I apologize for the view. You're seeing the back of the canvas right now. And my paint pouring off of the canvas. And I do the bottom left corner. So I have a nice design, and I tried to stretch it out a little more because I noticed that that part of the canvas, the bottom part for you, is lacking in color, and I wanted my composition to be more centered, but I had stretched the paint out enough already. So that is the painting, and as you see, it's sinking and sinking under the black base, and it wouldn't be paint pouring if it weren't messy. So when you take your gloves off, if you have a lot of paint on your gloves, you should be careful. I'm touching up my corners. I still think that this piece is going to turn out, but it didn't. Although my daughter-in-law likes it, and I'll explain that too. So as you take off your gloves, you want to be careful to not splatter your paint onto your painting. You want to be careful. And I made a mess and got paint all over my arm, but thank goodness I have baby wipes down there, and I just use. So I clean myself up, and it's no big deal. Although I frequently come home with paint all over my hands and arms, and it can really ruin a manicure, but that's why we wear gloves. But sometimes I just stretch the painting and touch the paint without gloves. So I'm looking at it and I'm noticing that there's a problem, and I'm fixing a little blemish. And I see that the paint is sinking, and I look over to my other painting that I did, and that also had the paint sink. All of the paintings I did that day with this mix unfortunately failed. So here you can see that I had what would have been a nice painting, but it didn't come out. And it's really important that your paints are the same consistency. Here's the dried version, and my daughter-in-law likes it. She calls it Secrets, and I am going to give it to her. But thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And like, subscribe, and comment if you would. It really helps me out. Thank you so much.